Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham, your Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. It's a late one. We're doing a live show. Joining me tonight, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's been a long day, a long week, some unexpected extra radio. I'm a little beat up. I'm a little sitting in a stool for 4 hours, 5 hours straight is usually a little treacherous on my back.
I'm missing our fellow candlelight and podcast friend. I lit the Japanese cherry blossom in his honor.
Ooh,
It smells
Japanese
great.
cherry blossom. That's
Yeah,
fancy. Fancy, Sean. Sean did bring it up right there. Brenden is not here this evening. He may drop in. We'll see. No promises there, but he's got some family commitments out of town, and he was commuting back from Arizona or something. I don't know what's happening. I just know
I saw his social media. He was like on a lake in Arizona. That's cool.
Really?
Is he driving back? That's a long way.
It kind of he's driving to Southern California where one of set of his parents live. So that's the last time I heard. He said something Parker something Florida. I'm not sure. Jim Garfinkel, Brenden is not at the movies. He's not.
Confirmed.
We know that for a fact. I don't even think if he's in like a caravan with kids and like family members, I think he'd fall asleep and miss the movie in the caravan.
I'm not confident he would know how to buy a movie ticket. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, are you?
I too am not confident that he would know how to buy a movie ticket. I didn't even think about that. It's funny because you and I are movie buffs and we go to the movies all the time. Not together, but we go to the movies all the time.
One day.
One of these days. Yeah. I mean,
we'll share a popcorn.
There are those days where I go to the movies between shoot around and game and the game at night. And there's always going to be a chance that you can just like go hang out with me. The theater there at the plaza is nice.
Oh, I don't see movies when the sun is up. That's
a
rule.
I don't know.
Cannot do it.
I like coming out of a movie and like looking outside. Well, maybe I don't. Where you get done with a movie at like 3:00 and then you walk out into the like the Doco. And then I realize at that moment that I have like 9 more hours to work. That's not usually a good feeling.
See, I'm not after that. I'm not after that type of experience, but I will say I've always enjoyed that theater. That theater is pretty cool.
Yeah, the seats are great. Everything lays back. It's pretty cool. I also like every once in a while I'll bring my bag and like wrap up. There's King's Pulse right there. I don't miss the movie talk.
Who's that? Oh, that's Brenden.
That's Brenden. Yeah. I have to like wrap my bag up with me because, I carry like all kinds of equipment and sometimes I fall asleep in the movies and that's downtown's not exactly the best place to fall asleep in a movie theater.
Oh, you'll be just fine.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Sean, let's just get to the business side. If you're sitting here watching live, thanks for joining us. Give us a thumbs up. Let's see, subscribe. If you want to comment, you have to be a subscriber. So you can subscribe to the podcast here on YouTube and then instantly make comments. But you can't comment if you're not a subscriber. Become a subscriber to the Kings Beat. Become a premium subscriber to get invites to the happy hour. We're supposed to have a happy hour this week. It has not worked out. It's been a bear of a time, Sean, getting a guest for the happy hour, just because it's a weird time in the year. And then I also, like, for those of you who haven't been keeping up all week, like Kenny has some personal stuff going at home. And so I've had to step in on Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and so tomorrow and Thursday as well with D-Lo. So it's me and D-Lo every day from 12 to 4 on ESPN 1320. So just like absolutely crazy week for me. And Sean, you got the same thing going, right? You're all over the board.
Well, I'm all over the board, but it's it's mainly because I'm in total off-season checkout mode right now. Not that I'm stealing money. I would say that today was a busy day. Went down to Levi's Stadium, have 49ers OTAs, a lot of talk with the quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, who was about as talkative um, and just jovial as we've probably ever seen him. And so that was kind of fun. And yeah, Sam Darnold. They just made all the quarterbacks available with the exception of Brandon Allen, who is kind of interesting as well. But Kyle Shanahan talked, and it's good to be out there. The weather was phenomenal, and it makes me very excited for what lies ahead for my long holiday weekend in Napa with Bottle Rock. So yeah, it's my favorite time of year.
Yeah, so Sean is going to Bottle Rock. That's why we're doing this tonight. We have like a crazy week of, again, I've got to be on the radio tomorrow at noon. And Sean's got all kinds of duties. Brendan out of town, all kinds of duties. Like we've been all over the place. So it's difficult sometimes to squeeze these in. You'd think it's the off season, we'd have way more time to do things like this, but we don't. I also, when we first started the podcast, I'm just going to bring this up now. When we first started the podcast, the intent was to do something different than what we do right now. Usually we do 2 episodes a week during the regular season, and it's Sean and Brendan and I. And that was not the original plan. The original plan was to do that once a week, and then for me and Sean, or me and Sean and Brendan, or me and Brendan to do interviews outside one day a week. And it just hasn't worked out because it's really hard with 3 people to like navigate a season anyways. And so I really hadn't like fired up the old interview situation, but we're going to start that later this week. I'll have a second pod dropping, and Ricardo Brito Reyes from Portugal is going to join me to talk Nemias Keita, but also Sasha Vezenkov. He's actually been someone who has covered all kinds of EuroLeague games overseas, and he's got some scouting info that he can give us on Sasha. And I think that's going to be one of those guys that we're going to keep talking about all summer long as far as Sasha. So you'll get 2 podcasts this week. It just won't be the 3 of us. It'll be me and someone else. And then there's going to be opportunities if Sean or Brendan want to jump in on a pod during the slow time of the year here, where they can jump on and do interviews with me as well. But for right now, we'll kick it off with one and see how it goes. And so you guys will have a little bit of extra content and something different. So we'll have the happy hour as soon as possible. It's just literally a matter of scheduling and a matter of me not having to pull double duty with ESPN 1320 at the same time for like full shifts. It's a long day. It's a long day.
By the way, I know this is total stream of consciousness, but I don't think I mentioned in our last, maybe I did. I had an interview with Walt Williams. And
oh no,
that was pretty fun. Yeah, he was in town for a
card show
signing. Yeah, a card show in Roseville. Malik Monk was actually at that card show. I think I know Horace Grant was there. Bill Cartwright was there. Joe Smith. I mean, there's a blast from the past.
Wow.
But yeah, it was kind of fun to catch up with Walt. And I didn't know him very well. I didn't cover him. I'm not that old, but I was growing up a Kings fan. I was it was kind of a blast from the past, and he knows that I know that I'm close with Mitch Richmond and all those guys. So he was one of the few guys I didn't really know as being a former King player. So it'll be I could actually probably incorporate that into the podcast at some point. I haven't even put up on YouTube yet, so it's just, and the video portion of it is just him, and you just hear me ask questions just for our TV purposes at Fox 40. But it was a fun chat, man, and we had really good conversation about Kevin Herter, who's another University of Maryland guy. He follows the Kings semi closely, mainly because of Alex Len and Kevin Herter as 2 former Maryland guys. And it was kind of fun, and he had some good thoughts about Herter and what he brings to the Kings, and how he's ended up blossoming into this NBA player that plays a significant role, and it just so happens it's what he considers is still his NBA home in Sacramento. So he's thrilled to see Kevin Herter with the Kings, and says he's got a big, bright future. So it'd be kind of fun to use that.
Yeah, man. I've never met Walt Williams. Like, and
Yeah.
out of everybody, he's one of the few that I haven't met. I mean, like
He
we've
came
met
to
Brian Grant.
Yeah,
I
he
don't know.
came to the happy hour. We should use him for a happy hour. I think we could probably make that happen, but not necessarily for tomorrow's happy hour, but a future one that maybe this offseason. But um, he was at the final Arco game and hasn't been to Golden One Center yet, but just brought back a bunch of memories. I should have mentioned that the last show.
Nice. Look at that. Mr. Brenden Nunes is getting set up now. He's trying to join us.
Don't rush. Don't rush.
He's trying to join us from afar. How special.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean, I haven't been to a card show since I was young. So I used to love I probably still have I don't know, 25, 30,000 baseball cards hiding in my basement. I have every set from, I don't know, 86, every top set from 86 until late 90s. I still have a ton of cards hiding in my basement. But I even, at one card show when I was a kid, me and my brother, we had a table at a card show. Yeah. And we sold our stuff, which was hard to do because you're like young and those are your babies and you put them all out there. But I had figured out, this is kind of a weird thing, like the 3-pack of Donruss. You remember the long 3-pack that hung vertically? I figured out the order in front of King Griffey Jr. So me and my brother would go wherever we could find them, go through the entire stack and pull all the ones with King Griffey Jr. So we had a ton of King Griffey Jr. Donruss rated rookies that we sold. So
Sold nicely. I haven't been to a card show in a long time. It was, kind of peek behind the curtain. We met up at the hotel he was staying at in the lobby and shout out to I think it's Home to Suites or something. It's over by Top Golf, and it was they were very kind to let us use their lobby. And Walt's a pretty boisterous guy, so he talks kind of loud, and there were people. Somebody walked up and he says, "You probably get this a lot, but I know who you are, but I don't know your name."
Was he like you remember Rui that worked for
yes,
Cowbell?
Yeah.
Was he like Rui?
No, not like that, because that was that one scared the shit out of me every time he spoke.
Oh, he's a great kid. Great kid,
hear.
really talented. He his openings I always had to tweak. Like a couple of times it was like a meth head searching for a fix, and I'm like, okay, man, like this is basketball. We can't go down that path. But had to work with him. But he was a good kid. I remember I went to a card show at Kennedy when I was young, and Greg Vaughn signed autographs, and I think Ricky Jordan, and maybe that was
I went to
Sac High. And Sac High, Kevin Johnson signed autographs when I was young. So somewhere hiding, I have some strange autographs.
Greg Vaughn's going to bring in a bunch of people for he's got a golf tournament next month. So that should be pretty fun. Yeah. He always, every year he has a nice golf tournament and brings out some heavy hitters. So let's see who shows up this year. Yeah.
All right. So sorry, we've just squandered your time here, but it is the off season, and
it was kind of Kings related. It was kind of
Kings related. I totally agree.
I know. Jim asked if the interview. I haven't put the interview up yet. I've been slacking, so I'm gonna. We aired the part for TV on both of those, but no, I'll post that interview. Hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah. What's up, TC? So hey, thanks for joining us tonight. We got Stephen Brown in here, who is in way early. Rob W., who's a standard, you're everywhere. Rees 37. Hello. Michael Vaughn, Tyler Griner, Spectre 707. Good to see everybody in here. We got plenty of people in here, so make sure you're hitting the thumbs up. That always helps out with algorithms and things like that. But let's get to the news of the day. We'll talk a little bit about the Boston Celtics saving their season for one more day. But I think the biggest news was this afternoon with the Woj and Shams tweeting about Jordi Fernandez still being in the running for for the Suns job at this point. But I think there's another job that he's been mentioned to as a finalist. So I don't know. Like when you look at these jobs that are available, Sean, they're some of the best jobs in basketball. We're talking about Philadelphia. We're talking about Milwaukee. Like all of these heavy hitter teams. Who am I missing? Philadelphia, Milwaukee. Um, man, I mean Boston's potential. Toronto. There's one other big job.
Toronto, yeah, you got Toronto.
Yeah. Anyway, it's good to hear Jordi being mentioned for these things, but do you think Jordi actually gets the call here?
No, I mean we talked about it in the last show, and just to reiterate, yeah, I don't think so, but certainly having him far along the interview process is going to be a good thing for him. As somebody who's interviewing not only for head coaching positions, but just getting his name out there and getting in front of a lot of executives. And for a young guy, he's not necessarily new to this, but this is about as sexy of a name as he's had in the NBA in terms of people interested in him. So maximizing the opportunity, getting far along, and being in the discussion is going to be great. So I think this sets up nicely for something down the road. I just think some of these teams that are available for coaches right now, Milwaukee, who narrowed down their search a little bit, Phoenix, who just to kind of clean up there, like you had two reports that came out that they had finalists, and then Chris Haynes added that Phoenix wasn't done with their finalists and added two more names to it, and one of I think it was Charles Lee and Kenny Atkinson.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's some journalism on journalism crime there in terms of some reporting in terms of what the finalists are and whether or not they're narrowing down their search or what. But it's nice to see Jordi's name there. I'm rooting for him. Certainly I know there's a belief that there's Kings fans and some people are like, no, keep your hands off Jordi. He means a lot to the Kings. He does, but I think you should also have a lot of confidence that there's a lot of names out there, and Mike Brown knows a lot of people, and filling the shoes of Jordi Fernandez, although maybe not ideal considering Jordi was his first pick to be an associate head coach. Certainly there are some viable, great people that could step into that role. So more than anything, a head coach wants to see members of his staff elevate to that. That's what it's all about. So yeah, it would be sad to see him go if from a day-to-day standpoint, but you celebrate it because that's exactly what this is all about. So I think it's great, and it really speaks to the staff that Mike Brown put together.
I totally agree. I mean, Mike Brown he handpicked Jordi out of from Impact years ago, and he was Mike's personal assistant. He was Mike's son's trainer. Jordi is he's a breath of fresh air. He's really direct, really honest, and sometimes a little too honest. I would love to see him have a full-time gig where you're listening to him all the time, because I think he'd be an interesting mix of the last two head coaches that he's worked for, which is Mike Brown and Michael Malone. And Michael Malone has always had that edge to him where he doesn't care. He's willing to say whatever. And Jordi has that too. I think Mike is a little more Mike Brown is a little more positive than Michael Malone, but both of them are great interviews and great mentors for a guy like Jordi to have. And so I think it's really cool that we're getting to see, sort of the process of Mike Brown starting to develop his own coaching tree. And I think the Kings are in good position too. You got guys like Doug Christie, guys like Luke Laux, who probably, can take bigger roles coming up here in the next year or two. Whether Jordi gets a job this summer or, maybe next summer, I think that this opens a door for, you want to be a head coach that is developing the people around you, that's developing more head coaches in the league and sort of giving back. And I think it's a really cool thing. I do think that, of the jobs, Toronto might make more sense for me for a guy like Jordi, just because a first-year coach, you can get into some trouble. And we're seeing that right now in the playoffs, whether it's Joe Mazzulla or Darvin Ham, where, these guys did what they could. They got as far as they could go, but they've been outmaneuvered in the playoffs by some really, really good seasoned coaches. and that's tough. And so I don't see a team like Philadelphia going out there and signing a brand new first-time coach. I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks will do that unless it's one of their own and Charles Lee. I don't, a lot of these jobs are just really good jobs. Even the Phoenix job, that's a really good job. And there's going to be expectations that come with that. And you're almost like looking out for Jordi. You almost kind of wish that you don't get those jobs, because those jobs come with like an incredible amount of stress from day one. And if you don't figure it out, if you don't perform well, you're not going to be there very long. And that's kind of what we're seeing. Let's start with Michael Malone. We both have known Michael for a long time. We both have good relationships with Michael. I think we both appreciated Michael for his brashness, his comedy, his honesty when he was here. He's super witty, super fun, super lovable. Like behind the scenes, just a really good dude. Just how excited are you? How proud are you of him? Like seeing him make it to the NBA Finals with that Denver Nuggets team, and on top of that, like along the way, he's carving out their place, which I love. I love to see, because he's not letting them be overlooked.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, he's not overbearing. He celebrates accomplishments, but it's not popping bottles. I mean, except for like if you go back to when he was Sacramento Kings head coach and when they won Summer League, they treated that like a big deal. And it was nice to see, in a way. I mean, some people might poke fun at it, but the object was to win. I remember, talking to Chris Gent one time, who was around, I think, with Michael, and he'd look at it and says, no, the object's to win the game. The object, I say, no, Summer League's a little bit more than wins and losses. He goes, no, it's all about wins. It's about wins and losses. And now Chris Gent is, one of the assistants on the Lakers, and we'll see how that shakes out with their departure from the playoffs. But it's just an intensity that he has, and his players love him. He loves his players. He holds everyone accountable. He's very OCD. Oh, look who it is! Brenden has shown up.
Oh, hello.
You shut up a minute, because I was just talking about Michael Malone, so I'm going to continue to gush, and then we'll get to you, pal, because we got a lot to talk about. Yes. Right. So anyway, just it's great to see. I think my favorite moment has been pointing out, and I think this has a shelf life to it. I don't think you can do it every press conference, because it kind of gets a little nauseating a bit, but Charles Barkley kind of backed it up today. Michael Malone keeps pointing out that, like, no one's talking about us, and we just continue to do what we do as the Nuggets chug along and just, sweep the Lakers. And every time they win, it's like you're almost apologizing for not giving them, their due. Not saying that Nikola Jokic is a top 3 player in the league. Not saying that Jamal Murray is kind of reclaiming what that stage that he kind of showed that he was, more than deserving of before the injury, and just the success that they've had. He points it out all the time. Charles Barkley was pissed that, no one was talking about the Nuggets after they swept the Lakers, and everyone's talking about LeBron, but rightfully so. I mean, LeBron, we can get to those comments later if need to, but LeBron gave everybody some talking points for the next few months while the NBA offseason rattles on, and that's going to be a story every day. But just super thrilled for Michael, though, for for really the organization for really sticking with him. I mean, they've gone through front office changes and a lot of different roles that people have come in, and obviously the Tim Connolly stuff is pretty well documented, and they bet on the continuity. They bet on Jokic becoming the superstar, and they bet on Murray and Porter being able to return to what looks like themselves after injuries. And there's probably 6 or 7 times along the way where other owners and general managers would have fired Michael Malone, and they didn't. And Denver probably you cut that in half, and there was probably that many times that Denver may have came close, whether it be it Connolly, be it ownership, be it just anybody just picking apart what they've done, and here they are, and well deserved going to the NBA Finals and do it in grand fashion against the Lakers. And I think my favorite moment is the Jokic brothers tossing him up in the air like he's a he's a jolly good fellow, and just throwing him up in between those two Herculean dudes was pretty funny, man.
It's awesome. I love what's going on with Denver. We're going to get more to that, but let's welcome in Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, welcome. You look a little like you got a little sun.
I did. I got some much needed color starting from a pretty pasty starting point. I am very tired. Hopefully, by the way, not the most ideal video setup today, and hopefully my audio is all right, but I'm good. I'm tired. I'm fresh out of a 5-6 hour car ride and a handful of days on a lake, river. I don't really know what to call it. Same thing. Not
body
really,
of water.
but it's water.
Body of water.
Yeah. So
I have yet to be out on a body of water. It's sitting right there. I did.
You have like 10 boats. How's that not possible?
Oh, I cursed at my son today. Oh, God. So we have a speedboat, which is on a lift on the lake with some, like at an older couple's house here in the lake. They let us store it there. We pay him for it. But like he allowed the speedboat to get filled with water. And then that's not a good thing because that short circuits everything, blew a battery that we had bought last year. So we couldn't raise the motor out of the water when we went to pull it off the lake. So then we had to block the boat up on the trailer and lift it up off the ground because if not, the motor was dragging on the ground. Yeah. So the boats have, we're at stage 1 of getting the boats ready for the summer season. And
I did learn what makes a boat a pontoon boat, and I was like, wow, James uses that word a lot. Now I know. I got
the pontoon boat?
Yeah, I just didn't know what really made something a pontoon boat.
It's the pontoons.
Sean? I don't know. I didn't know what pontoons were.
Yeah. Well, I get that. Isn't like what's the Hobie Cat kind of version? Like, what is that? I don't know what that's called other than Hobie Cat. I think that's
a Hobie Cat is like a canoe.
No, that's not true. You got the two things like
this.
Sorry,
you mean like
and then the netting,
like a sailboat. Yeah. Oh, you're talking like a sailboat.
I think so. I don't know.
Yeah.
Welcome to Boat Talk. Did you drive back from Arizona, Brenden?
Yes, just drove back with family, and then I drive back. It's right on it's the Mississippi, technically, I guess, which I also just found out is actually what borders California and Arizona. I got
it. Mississippi that's not the Mississippi.
Not Mississippi. Colorado. The Colorado. That's what I said.
You are tired.
Whatever. I am exhausted. Yes. And then I wake up tomorrow and do another 5 hours of driving back home. So
that's amazing. Yeah. And so Sean knows a pontoon boat is their giant metal pontoons. Like they're like you've seen a seaplane, right? The pontoons on the bottom of a seaplane, though they're just strapped underneath the boat, but like
right.
It's like a floating living room.
Just Google it. You'll see.
Yeah.
A floating living room. That's basically that's what it is.
That's what my boat is, right, Brenden? You've been out on the boat. It's a floating living room.
Sure.
I have like couches and there's a barbecue and
stripper pole and
no stereo.
Typical living room. What does Sean's living room look like?
Were we offline? People are saying Ben Century is saying that we are offline. I don't think we're offline. I've been looking the whole time and we've had plenty of people in the chat the whole time. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah. We're going now. So whether like we were offline or not, I don't know. I'll go back and look, but we can check it out, but I don't think we went offline. Let's get back to Denver. Brenden, you didn't get to spend the time with Michael Malone that me and Sean did, but you have to be able to appreciate what they've been doing there. I guess the question, like, is there a way for a team like that to get the notoriety they deserve because it sort of seemed like after game one, it was all about they figured something out with Rui Hachimura, defending Nikola Jokic and all things. Oh, now the Lakers are going to win. Game two, game three, you just kept seeing it. Even game four, we get to the end, and you got this moment where they sweep the Lakers. Everything's amazing. And then LeBron hints at retirement just to like throw a monkey wrench in and the entire like celebration. But how does a team like this, like the Denver Nuggets, like get their notoriety?
I think by doing exactly what they're doing right now. I think that beating the Lakers in the fashion you just did with the players that are on that roster, and then you say the same thing about you just took care of Phoenix the round prior to that, which has an extremely talented roster as well. Like I think that this already is enough, but obviously going the step further would just enhance that. And they're probably going to be favorites in the finals. If it ends up being Miami, I guess that's a comfort for Miami, right? They've been underdogs the entire time, and at this point, I probably will not count them out. Seems stupid to do at this point, but I think that Denver is getting that recognition that they deserve. They hadn't been to this point with this group, and to your guys' point earlier, I think it's extremely impressive that they kept together this core, which includes Michael Malone, but Jokic, MPJ, Jamal Murray being the primary grouping there. Keeping that group for so long through the ups and downs, I think is pretty rare in today's NBA. And then if you look at Miami on the other side, keeping Spoelstra around for as long as they have is also a rarity nowadays. So I think that exactly what Denver's doing right now, they could win 1 or 2 games in the finals, and I still think they would have respect going into next year, at least when it comes to Western Conference race and what their extent of playoff potential is. I think they've already accomplished it.
You brought something up there. Like if they win, okay, so they're going into the finals, but if Miami wins, that Miami would be the underdog. If Boston somehow survives a 3-0 and comes back and wins that series, are they going to be favored in the finals over Denver? Because that's got to be like the craziest like dynamic I've ever thought of, like when it comes to betting. No,
I don't think so.
You don't think,
think
that
so?
that's
Pretty
crazy?
close. I think it'd be pretty close to even.
No, I'm saying it would be crazy for sure, but I'm saying I don't think that they'd be favored, especially with 9 days. You're talking 9 days rest for Denver, who was a number 1 seed in the West. Like I know that the Celtics played in the finals last year, but I don't know. That's probably a good reason why I don't bet. I wouldn't think it. I wouldn't think that Boston would be favored.
What did you guys think of the game tonight? I know, Brenden, you got a little little Celtics blood in you. Like, did you get to watch any of it? Because I was going to ask if you watched any movies on your 6-hour car drive, but I
watched Life about 4 different times on this trip.
Such a liar.
But
what a liar.
No, yeah, I did get to watch that game, specifically the second half. I mean, Boston's defense, I think, was finally what you expected it to be, where they just had that stretch where, 12-0, 13-0 run, something like that, where Jason Tatum's hitting tough buckets and their other guys are knocking down threes as well. But defensively, they're getting it done. Like Grant Williams had a block. They had a string of 3 blocks in a row on different possessions. And I think that that's really big. But also a huge story of tonight is just which team is going to get their shots to go down. I think that Miami's played phenomenally this entire playoff run. Their heart has been amazing. They're also shooting the crap out of the ball to a point that does kind of feel unsustainable. It is also weird because they were a bottom 5 3-point shooting team this year. And I think last regular season, they ended at first. So they have the capable shooters, but Boston's been shooting below average and Miami's been on the opposite end of that. So I think that that's a big factor here. But Boston looked like, in my mind, the team that, won all the regular season games that they did finally tonight. And to me, that's defensively.
Well, and to that point too, like Miami's doing it without Tyler Hero, who's one of their, I think is the best 3-point shooter on his team. I can't remember statistically if it's him or Duncan Robinson but they're easily in the top 2. And yeah, I didn't see a whole lot of tonight's game. I was coming back from the 49ers camp, but I will say I saw, enough to where, like Boston put it together. They played what was familiar to them. They've played in elimination games in this postseason. My concern is not that, I don't have a whole lot of faith in them going back to Boston. I mean, let's just look at their postseason, look at their season overall, but really this postseason, like TD Garden has not been kind to them. And especially in the Philly series, them going back to Boston where Miami could potentially, step on their throat there, could hurt. Granted, they took care of business against Philly in Game 7, but teams have been known to have been able to win in Boston. So it's not, especially this team who just went in there and took 2 from you. So it would be really shocking to see them lose 3 straight in a series on their home floor. So I think logic would say that maybe that doesn't happen. But when you combine it with what happened in that Philly series, even though you were able to escape with a win, you've shown the ability that Boston's shown the ability to be a better road team than a home team. So yeah, they played like their backs were against the wall. I don't think one win cures all, because I don't really think there's much momentum at all. I think they'll just come out, and I think Miami is more than capable of taking care of business, especially, it was nasty to see Gabe Vincent turn his ankle like he did. He kept playing, and it'll be interesting to see how that swells up, if at all, and how that might play a role. But other than that, I feel pretty confident that Miami can go into Boston and get a win again.
I'm intrigued by Miami. Damian and I were talking about this on the air today, and I kind of compared them to like a Major League Baseball team. Like when you get to the World Series, on occasion the superstars like show up and do something amazing, right? But typically in baseball, it's some rando dude who ropes a double at some crazy point in a game that that wins you a World Series. And that's what it kind of feels like the Miami Heat are. It's like a collection of random dudes. And from one game to the next, you don't know who's going to beat you. Like Caleb Martin putting up 27 in one game. Like it's just the randomness that makes them so difficult to defend and to game plan for. And, you got Jimmy Butler, you got Bam Adebayo, but then you don't know who else it's going to be, whether it's Lowry or whether it's Strauss or Struess, whether it's,
Strauss,
all of, these Duncan Robinson comes in and hits a couple of big shots. You just don't know. You don't know who it's going to be. And that's kind of like Gabe Vincent or, I think there's a uniqueness to them and a randomness to them. And then the only other team that I kind of feel is similar is Denver. I think Denver has, their 2 superstars, or their superstar and then a really good player in Murray. Like we have no idea, like the end of the day, like where he's going to rank as far as like stardom, just because he's coming back still from the ACL tear. He's looked great, but he's only a year removed. And then, Michael Porter, again, he's a guy that you're always waiting for him to break again, just because he has such a long history of back problems. But the rest of the guys on that team, like the Bruce Browns, just name that guy, the Kentavious Caldwell-Popes, like all these guys step up in different moments, and they're really an interesting team to watch. Like I enjoy watching Denver because, again, it is that randomness. It's not just AD and LeBron and everyone else is just standing around watching.
Yeah. And again, defensively. And not enough credit goes to Spoelstra, like ever. I mean, Michael Malone wants to talk about how Denver doesn't get credit. I mean, Spoelstra doesn't get nearly the credit he deserves.
Yeah, I fully agree. Brennan, you had a thought there?
Just crediting Aaron Gordon as well along those guys you mentioned. I know we've talked about his defense before. I think it was even last episode, but like getting that game closing block on LeBron, I think is a great representation of just how much he was able to limit LeBron in that series. And obviously, I think LeBron is maybe not quite the best number 1 option like he has been at prior times in his career, but still a lot of credit to Aaron Gordon there. And just to circle back to Miami really quickly as well, Sean had mentioned the Tyler Hero injury, but if you guys remember when we were in SF for the first round, we were sitting watching Miami play Milwaukee, and Victor Oladipo went down as well. Like this team to be doing what they're doing with the injuries that they've had is really fun to see. It's a great collection of guys that are just, overly confident at the right moment. I'm really interested to see what sort of money Gabe Vincent can pull this offseason. People throw around like this, like 480 a lot for Austin Reeves. I don't think he flirts with that, but I'm just curious to see what it is, especially considering Miami like just overpaid a pure shooter. Well, now it looks like an overpay, right? The 5-year 90 for Duncan Robinson. So I'm curious to see what happens with Gabe Vincent come this offseason.
Yeah, Sean, you're a Gabe Vincent guy. You've known Gabe for a while, right?
Yeah, born in Modesto, Stockton High School, St. Mary's of Stockton High School star. He was in the Kings organization in terms of being a Stockton King at one point, and come from UCSB. He works it out with a lot of time. Spends most of his summers really in Sacramento, working out, and just great to see that grind, man. Like he's a guy that nothing's easy for him. And to Brenden, to your point, I feel like this off season will be more of the same. Some people might be like, oh, he's due a big payday, and there's not a lot of teams that have a whole lot of cap room. So it will be interesting to see where he could be a complete product of his environment in terms of some of the play he's shown over the past few years. And they may need to quote unquote overpay because he's a perfect system guy for what they ask of him. And I'll say this too. I think one of the things that makes Gabe Vincent even better than maybe like to other people is just the way he plays with Jimmy Butler. I mean, Jimmy Butler gives that kid all the confidence in the world. Jimmy Butler absolutely loves Gabe Vincent. And I wonder what that looks like if you pluck him off of that team and put him in, Charlotte or Orlando or something like that. Does it have the same impact? Does he play a bigger role? And I think just so much of the familiarity, we were talking about Denver with all the continuity that they have. I think that just speaks volumes to what how the secret sauce is for Miami as well. That system, the way they play. And I think to me, Miami has to keep Gabe Vincent. And they have to make you talked about the overpay. They have to do that for somebody like him for as important as he's been.
He's been really important in the playoffs, but regular season, he's
okay.
even
but it's being able to run the offense. Like they don't need him to score. They don't. He had 29 points the other night. He had 17 or 19 tonight. They don't really need it, but when it's asked of him, he's the type of player that'll take on that role. But what they need for him is just to run the offense and play on-ball defense, and he does a good job at both. He won't blow you away with stats, but when called upon, he's capable of doing it.
And of course, Gabe Vincent is a player that the Kings signed to a summer contract, and there was a photo that was taken with him signing his summer contract, sitting at Vlade Divac's desk with Vlade's draft board sitting right there, and a printout of the Vlad father picture, which is hilarious. But
that's awesome.
That was Gabe Vincent, and it's just kind of cool to see a guy like make a sort of come full circle. And like you bring up Spoelstra, I think Spoelstra is probably the best coach in the NBA right now. He's been incredible for how, I think more than any other coach in the league, he creates NBA players. And that's such a rare thing. He pulls guys off the scrap heap and finds ways to turn them into bona fide NBA players, and they get paid. He found Hassan Whiteside after the Kings had left him for dead, and Hassan ends up in China and like all kinds of places. Man, he played in Turkey. He played in some crazy places, just like he is now. I think Hassan is still playing in Puerto Rico. But he was able to like get Hassan on the straight and narrow, and the guy made $100 million because of Eric Spoelstra. So I think there's something about having a system and having a coaching staff that somehow knows how to develop talent better than everyone else, or maybe scout talent better than everybody else. It really is fun to see how they've been able to, continuously stay in the conversation. as far as the Heat. What do you have any predictions on that series? You think it's over? Do you think Boston will win one more? What do you think they can come back? What do you got, Brenden?
I mean, it's got to be over, right? I think that sure there's a world where Boston does it, but I doubt it. The way that they rolled over in Game 3 was honestly so embarrassing. That to me was like, okay, this team's done. Like far and away. You can't get smacked like that. If it's a close game, sure. But that was like, come on. In a game where you're down 2-0, I get you're on the road, but like you can't get beat the way that they did in that game. So after that, I think that Boston's done. Maybe they can rally off today's game, but maybe they take one more. I mean, I think it's probably done next game.
I actually agree with you, and you nailed it. That Game 3 was embarrassing, and there was a lot of quit in that team. And I don't think that goes away with one win. I think they got motivated for this game because it's an elimination game. You've had some pretty negative headlines, and a couple of the players saying the right things, which is don't let us win Game 4 because they want to carry this momentum, and going back to Boston, they believe they can win, and they should believe that they can win. I'm eating a lot of crow because I thought Boston. I thought it'd be a very competitive series. I thought Boston would win this series, but there's no way I'm picking them. So maybe I'm the kiss of death because I'm thinking Miami goes into Boston and takes care of business, and we have like over a week of no basketball, which would be kind of shitty going into an NBA Finals, but is what it is.
I'm gonna give Boston one more game. I think that and then we're gonna wait and see if they get one more game here. I think they can take one more. I picked them to win tonight, and like just because I didn't feel like it was the same situation that the Lakers were in. The Lakers just weren't nearly as good as the Denver Nuggets. Like they fought and they played as hard as you could expect. And, LeBron was incredible. And, what he's been able to do at his age is crazy. But for me, like that series was over. It was over because there was one team that was so superior to the other. You get to the Boston Miami game, and I still think that like what we've seen, like a 3-0 lead and now 3-1, I still think that Boston is a better team. They just, for some reason, had like a mental meltdown in the first couple of games and lost their way and were outcoached. I mean, that's part of it, but also just outplayed. Like, I'm not going to blame it all on Joe Mazzulla. He's a young coach who's trying to find his way and all that stuff. I just don't think that they were prepared and ready for a team like Miami. I think they thought they were going to walk in and win it, but I don't know. I want to give them one more game because I still believe that they're a better team than the Heat, and I think they've got more talent than the Heat. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but I at least want to see it like try to extend because I think it could be a fun series if all of a sudden like that little bit of doubt creeps in, and then like who shows up.
They appear to have a lot going on, and Malcolm Brogdon's comments the other day were kind of telling. And obviously, the heat is on Joe Mazzulla in a lot of different ways. It should be rather unexpected because, I think it's a little bit. If you lose the locker room, then you got to go. But I don't know that that's the case, right? Like, if you just look at it on the surface level, Joe Mazzulla takes over for Ime Udoka under some pretty gnarly circumstances, so close to the season. He essentially keeps his same staff with the exception of Damon Stoudemire, who goes off to I forget which college. He forgot where he ended up going actually, but he was was it Vanderbilt?
I could be.
I can't remember. Someone
looked
that up.
Yeah, I heard it today, and I can't remember. Yeah,
yeah, and then if obviously you've got the lead assistant not the lead, but he goes over to Utah. So that's the guy who was supposed to take over and doesn't.
Hardy.
So
yeah,
Will Hardy. So Joe Mazzulla takes over and does pretty great things. And honestly, they went from they started to play a different style. You went from being this defensive team where a guy like Robert Williams plays such a huge role for you to really focusing more on being an offensive, juggernaut. And it worked for the most part during the regular season. You don't have the stumbles that you did the year in the previous year when you go to the NBA Finals. But now you get into an NBA playoff situation with a first-time head coach who Georgia Tech. Thank you, Rob W, for Damon Stoudemire.
Good work, Rob W.
Yeah, appreciate that on the Googles. But then and then here you are in the playoff series, and you're going up against the likes of Mike Budenholzer and Doc Rivers, and those coaches lose their jobs because they lose to you. And you go through some turmoil in those series, and here you are with the Miami Heat, and they continue to do what they do. And if you lose, like someone asked a question a few minutes ago about does Jaylen Brown get dealt? I mean, remains to be seen. I think there's plenty of teams that are going to come calling, but I'm more concerned about does Joe Mazzulla get fired, and should he? He doesn't even have his staff. And so, but if you lose the locker room, none of that'll matter.
That's always my standard too. Like, it's always clear. Like, the second a guy loses the locker room, and they don't always know that they lost the locker room. And sometimes, like, we don't know that they lost the locker room, because even like with the Luke Walton thing, the players kept saying like, no, we don't want him fired. Like, no, we still like Luke. We're still cool with him. But he had lost the locker room some way. And that's always been my standard. As soon as a guy loses the locker room, it's like, okay, it's time to go. And, like Malcolm Brogdon, who looks just like Oscar from The Office. I still, like, to me, yes, he does. Just go ahead and Google that, and you'll be like,
well, I know what he looks like.
My goodness,
sure
he does.
I agree. Yeah, I got you.
He does. So, but like, I think that at some point, it has to be on the players. These are the players that got you to the championship last year. They're the players, they got you to the finals. They couldn't get over the hump, but like, I don't know if we can blame it on a rookie coach that this is what happens, and that everybody should just like heap a bunch of negativity on him. Like, I don't know. Like, Darvin Ham seems to be like he doesn't get any of this because he had a 7 seed, but he also has 2 first ballot Hall of Famers on his roster without any question. And like, everyone's like, oh, well, Darvin Ham's done a good job. They barely lose every game. They got swept. But Joe Mazzulla's, he at least won 1 game. Like, and I think we still are looking at like, man, is this dude getting fired like the day after their season ends? Maybe. Yeah, see? Yeah. Shortcakes 182. Just Googled it. Absolutely. He does look like Oscar. He does.
Brendan's on my side now. I like this.
No, he does. He does.
So
okay.
I know you guys mentioned the Jordi being a part of the Phoenix conversation of who they're looking at already. And you mentioned the variance in reporting in that, but if it's all right, I wanted to get more of your opinions on that, because I felt like it was glossed over, and that was very weird to me that Woj said there were 4 candidates, right? And then Shams tweets right after that there's 5, with Frank Vogel being the one that Woj did not include. And then Chris Haynes comes out 2 hours later, something like that, and says that, they're not actually even done with their list. Like, when you guys see variance in reporting like that, does that mean anything to you? Does that lead you to your thoughts in any direction?
I thought it was amusing. I think it kind of makes you wonder who's running the show down in Phoenix, and obviously, the reality of head coaches is there's 2, sometimes there's really 3, but there's really only 2 people who represent the entire league's coaches, and so sometimes there's some mixed messaging there. But it does make me wonder what the front office is looking like. But I think the overall message there is that Matt Ishbia is running everything, and he might be a little bit of a wild card in this whole situation, because everyone that's going to be interviewing, at least with the finalists, it was laid out that they'd be going out to meet him in Michigan to do those interviews, and they might have finalists on paper, but there's no rush. I mean, there's nothing stopping anybody for adding other names that come along, and maybe it takes somebody who's advising Matt Ishbia, or at least has his ear and isn't quote unquote a team advisor yet, or have a role within the organization, as Isaiah Thomas. And maybe Isaiah Thomas might be, this is all speculation, but maybe someone comes to him and he gives some feedback on a guy that all of a sudden intrigues Ishbia, and he said, oh no, I want to talk to him too. So I feel like you cast a wide net. You may already know what you want, but certainly getting people in front of you, and whether or not it ends up being this head coach or somebody down the road, it at least starts those conversations. So I don't really take much out of the mixed reporting, aside from the fact that I just feel like calling people finalists and then still interviewing others is fine, because perhaps the people that you're still going to interview don't end up being finalists.
I think it's interesting. I don't know. Like, I've been part of these things where you got people telling you one thing, and you're like, okay, I'm not buying like some of the stuff that I'm hearing, and so I think at some point you gotta pull back a bit, and just keep in mind that, like, what do we have right now? We have 4 coaching jobs open, and we have like 50 qualified coaches that are out there, including like 3 or 4 like what are considered star level coaches, right? Like, there are all kinds of really, like, for Jordi Fernandez to get this job would be really impressive, not just because, it's his first job and, he's bursting out on the scenes, but because you're up against Doc Rivers, you're up against, like Nick Nurse, you're up against all of these like really high end coaches. I think it's interesting that we're not seeing Mike Budenholzer's name mentioned a lot more than he has. I think it's really interesting that we haven't heard Monty Williams' name mentioned. And I wonder if Monty just has said, hey, I'm not jumping back in, this early, and he doesn't want one of these jobs. But there are great jobs available right now. Like, these aren't like your run of the mill, like, oh, that's a solid job, or, there is no like Kings job from the last 16 years open. There are, I mean, even the Toronto job. Well, I mean, even the Toronto job, you're like, hey man, I got to move up, to Canada, but at the same time, at least I get socialized healthcare, and my team is good. My team isn't horrible. I can figure out a pathway forward. I guess you got some questions like with Van Vliet and whether OG or Pascal Siakam, if you're going to make trades and all that stuff. But at the same time, that's a good job. Like, all of these jobs are good. And the Boston job comes available tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow, but like Friday or over the weekend. Man, that's another really, really good job that like all of these coaches should be jumping all over. I mean, I think it's wild that we're seeing this type of turnover with like the 1 seed, the 3 seed in the East, the 4 seed in the West. And then there's another guy, like I mentioned this on the show, and I might as well mention it here. All these jobs, all these guys are getting fired. How does Taylor Jenkins have a job? I mean, just like straight up, like
speak on it. Speak on it a little bit more. What do you mean?
Well, if all of these other coaches have jobs, just
Right.
lost their jobs, right? And you're the 2 seed in the Western Conference.
Okay.
And your culture as a club has gone from tough, like gritty, to talking too much, to holy shnikes, what in the world is happening? Like, we might need to change our entire franchise path. And you get drop kicked by the 7 seed. Like, how is it that he has escaped like the ridicule that some of these other coaches have, when like the stuff that's going on there, like, man, a lot of that is about culture. It's about like not being able to control what's happening, like letting things.
He's not a babysitter. He's not a babysitter. And I know a lot of what you're speaking with is about Ja Morant. You can't, you're not accountable for all of your every guy when he's not under your watch. You're not a babysitter. And there's a lot of smoke with Ja Morant, almost literally. And now they have to, they're holding him accountable. This is league getting involved with suspensions. You mentioned the talking a lot. Look, he's asking, he wants guys to be who they are, and it's served them well. Like you talk about the Dylan Brooks stuff, like he's not on the team, and I don't think I like the way they used him as a scapegoat, especially with the report that comes out where it's like he's not back under any circumstances. But I think you already knew that. I think people, like, if you connect the dots, that he wasn't going to be back, but he gave them an identity. And they had already chose to pay certain other players. Someone had to go, and I think everyone kind of read the room and knew that it wasn't going to be him. He wasn't going to be the guy that they were going to commit money to. So I don't put a lot of blame on Taylor Jenkins. You got beat, certainly. You got your franchise player going through a lot of things this year that are bad, and I also think you've shown an ability to win without your star player. And shown an ability to get it done, even when guys like Steven Adams, who you rely a lot on. So I'm playing a little devil's advocate there because I think kudos to them for not, putting his head on the chopping block. I think there's a lot of things that have gone right for them under Taylor Jenkins, and again, he's not a babysitter, man.
Brenden?
Yeah, I do kind of lean towards Sean on this one too. I think that it's tough to place too much of that on Taylor Jenkins, specifically the jaw stuff. I don't point towards the coach with that at all. Maybe the Dylan Brooks stuff, he could have attempted to like rein in a little bit, but in the end, that's still on Brooks. And I think if you're comparing it to some of the other coaches that got fired, I would lean more so towards, well, maybe some of those guys shouldn't have been let go of. Like, we're talking about Nick Nurse, Mike Budenholzer won chips in the near or just recently, and Monty Williams, extremely well respected coach. That just seemed like they just owner wanted to be able to pick his own guy. Like I more so think that maybe some of those other guys are a little bit not head scratchers because you can see the logic on some of them, but I don't know that it's necessarily going to, in hindsight down the line, look back and be the best route that they should have gone. And I think that using them as examples for like Jenkins, maybe I just disagree with a little bit there. And I also think that Jenkins did a good job with the guys that were then available after. There was a lot of guys out, and like a Tyus Jones stepped up, Santi Aldama, David Roddy. And, you could also credit the front office for being able to find those guys through the draft. They've shown a great ability to draft and find the right talent. But I don't know. I feel like Jenkins was put in a tough spot. If it continues, then maybe I would point in his direction a little bit more. But it feels hard to pin down exactly where that, issue is when it comes to culture now that just flipped so quickly in Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, here would be my rebuttal to both of you guys. Like, you were the 2 seed last year, you won 56 games. You're the 2 seed this year, you win 51 games. Last year, you get bounced in the second round, like unceremoniously. This year, you get bounced by a play-in team. Now, that play-in team has LeBron James. It's got, and Anthony Davis. But that doesn't change the fact that you got bounced by like a not a good team, by like a 38 win team. Well, what did the Lakers? Maybe they won 40.
Then the rebuttal to that would be, and the Lakers also took down the Warriors, who took down the 3 seed in the Kings. So it validates what they did against Memphis by going even a step further.
Yeah, I would just say it's not just. Okay, so you lose as a 2 seed 2 years in a row. You don't even make a legitimate playoff run either year. You didn't make a legitimate run. But on top of that, all of this other stuff, and you can say you're not a babysitter, but like the basic tenet of Mike Brown's entire like walking in the door is I need everybody to buy in. There are players there that clearly aren't bought in. They're bought into nonsense. They're doing whatever they want to do. That's part of being on a team. That's part of being a teammate. Part of being a teammate is not getting suspended for 8 games. It's not potentially getting suspended for 25 or 40 or whatever they're going to give him for next season. So I get what you're saying. You're not a babysitter, but you can set up rules within your team that say these groups of people aren't going to be around our team and aren't going to do damage to us. They're not going to travel. They're not going to do these things. You can set up rules.
Those rules also fall on organizations and not coaches, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have, and again, you have rules, but when they're broken, how do you respond? How do you combat that? How do you hold your player accountable? And again, that falls on the organization. That doesn't fall on your head coach. This falls on your general manager, your president, your owner. And to blame, Taylor Jenkins for that, it would be, I think, pointing the finger at the wrong person.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I disagree. I mean, especially if this is a world we live in where Monty Williams, Doc Rivers, Mike Budenholzer, Nick Nurse, like all these guys lose their jobs. If that's the world we're living in,
that's strictly wins and losses, right? Like that's
okay.
Not right.
I would fire Taylor Jenkins based on the fact that he's a 2 seed 2 years in a row and can't get past the second round the first year and in the first round the second year.
Right.
I mean, there are great coaches out there.
And we just talked about it too, like with in respect to Michael Malone, right? The continuity is kind of winning out here.
Yeah.
Eric Spoelstra, who's been there for such a long time in Miami, there's going to be owners that are knee-jerk reaction and will do that. But I think some would also argue that the firing of somebody like Budenholzer was a little bit surprising. I don't think the firing of Doc Rivers was surprising at all. I think that was going to happen, especially if you lose the way you do again and aren't able to reach the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference Finals. But I would also say the firing of Monty Williams, I think, was surprising to a lot of people. So I don't know. I personally wouldn't. It would be surprising to me if they had done that. But yeah, man, every owner is different.
Okay, so let's finish up with some King stuff. There's not a lot of Kings news. I haven't got a random like heads up that anyone has visited. We just got done with the combine. I think there's some big time winners and losers from the combine. We got done with the draft lottery last week, which we talked about extensively about how that impacted the Sacramento Kings. But here we are, less than a month from the NBA draft, right? Where are you guys at with not players, specific players, but what do the Kings need? What do you think that if you were to guess what they're going to use, maybe 24 and 35 on? I don't know that 50 whatever actually matters, but is there anybody or any player type that you're begging for them to go get? And we'll start with Brenden. Brenden, what do you got?
Lengthy and athletic wings and forwards is where I'm at. I think of a Casey Okpala, Kessler Edwards, those type of guys. I think that you can draft and bring up in your system. And maybe you hope there's a little bit more offense to their game, but the biggest thing to me is really just wings, forwards. I think positionally we saw the need there so much. If you can get a wing that can defend the perimeter, I think that's amazing. If you can get a forward that can protect that can switch out on the perimeter a bit, but also protect the paint as a weak side rim protector, I think that's important. So I would just go with lengthy wings and forwards.
Okay.
I want to play the game and participate in what you were asking, but it's hard because you're not drafting at 24. You're not drafting on what you need, if that makes sense. To me, you're going out and getting the best player available, no matter what you're looking at. And
I think
the reality is
you get best player available. I'm not sure if 24 is the same, but go ahead.
I think even more so. You swing for the fences because you're not going to get anybody realistically that's going to factor into your equation next year. You like what Brenden is talking about in terms of needs. I completely agree with you. You hunt the free agent and trade market for those needs. I just don't think you're going to find what you ultimately need that late in the draft. Certainly you can try, and I'm all for, teams want to stockpile length. I mean, that is length and shooting is obviously at a premium in the NBA. So I think there are talents to certainly kick the tires on and maybe hope that they fall to you. I think there's some intriguing names and possibilities, but I don't know that they go into this draft with respect to the question. I disagree. I don't think they're going to come into the draft going, boy, if only we can check this box, with the 24th pick. I don't think that they're going to approach it that way. But I do think that they're going to, try to find the best player available and the one that has, we talked, I think, last podcast about upside and potential and somebody who can obviously somebody who can already show the ability to be a player now and kind of meet them where they're at in respect to some of these other guys that are in that same age range. And I think you're not going to really achieve that with this draft so much unless you're moving the pick. So it's a tough question to answer. I just feel like you're going to go best player available.
Well, real quick to follow up on that question for you. If best player available in their eyes is a point guard,
right?
Does that change anything? Is
No,
there
you draft a
positions
point
you
guard.
can't get? Really?
Yeah, you draft the point guard. If you're slotting somebody and he's on your draft board and he's the one you've got circled, you don't skip 2 or 3 down your board just to find that rim protector, because the reality is that rim protector coming into the NBA probably isn't going to help you a whole hell of a lot as your team is currently constructed. So you're better off trying to find a rim protector who can already knows the ins and outs of the NBA and has been on an NBA team, and try and go and add him to yours.
Yeah,
that's the way I look at it.
I kind of look at this draft like if there is a backup point guard, sure. Like that doesn't I'm not gonna worry about the Davion situation until I have to worry about the Davion situation. I even if I put the 4 guards right now that they have, line them up. I think that there's some holes in the 4 guard set that they have that, maybe you do need to address this offseason. I think that they would be better served with a long, athletic, defensive-minded 3-and-D type point guard, backing up De'Aaron Fox as opposed to a guy like Davion. And that's not because I think Davion's a bad player. It's because I don't know that he's a great fit with what you're doing here. So I would look at point guard. I'm not going to look at backup center because if you look at the backup center situation in the draft, it's a mess. There aren't any true shot blockers really. There isn't a Walker Kessler hiding around 24, which what do you go last year, 22 or whatever it was. I don't see that guy sitting here on the board for the Kings. There's a couple of interesting foreign born players that you could draft and stash later in the draft with your 50, 54 or whatever it is. But I think that there are wings and there are players that the long athletic players. And I think it actually does play into whether or not you got Sasha coming over. If you have Sasha coming over and you're looking at 2 players and one of them is 19 and has all kinds of potential, that's 6'8", with a nice wingspan. And you got another wing that's 23 and he's also 6'8", but his potential is nowhere near as high. If you have Sasha, you go with the potential guy. If you don't have Sasha, you go with the other guy, the guy that maybe can help you. Because I think the Kings, the way that their roster is shaping up or their rotation is shaping up right now, there's not a lot of minutes. And so
right,
they're going to be active in the free agent market. They're going to be active, via trade. They're going to try to fill out this roster with NBA talent. And some of these positions, they could a guy that can spend the next 2 years in the G League. That's really fine if you've got a guy like Sasha coming over that is going to play in your rotation for the next 2 years. So that's at least what I would think. And again, 12 Malatu package Holmes in the 24 for a 4. I think you could even package Holmes in 24 to clear up $12 million in cap space this year and $12 million next year. I think there's a lot of ways that you can actually improve this team right here, whether it's drafting this pick or going out and moving it. So Brenden, is there anyone that's jumping out to you? Because I know you've already started doing your research. We don't have to get into them real quick.
Too crazy. I mentioned, I'm already not, I have to remind myself names, even though I have watched film. Why can I not already remember? I do know I've been interested in Maxwell Lewis from Pepperdine. Does kind of pique my interest a little. I know Sean mentioned Leonard Miller. It doesn't seem like the typical prototype in my mind from what we've seen from this front office, but maybe that logic changes or the way they go about it since you're later in the draft, something we talked about before. And I do think he's interesting. And there's also one of Wembanyama's teammates. It's Bilal Coulibaly, I think I'm saying. I hope I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
Who I think is pretty interesting. 6'6". He also is younger and not the typical prototype. I think falls similarly into the Leonard Miller when it comes to that. Not quite 19 years old yet, but he's a steals and blocks guy, which I think is something that the stocks seem to be something that Monty in the front office likes a bit. So there's definitely going to be interesting guys. And I think the guy that I couldn't think of the name earlier was Colby Jones, by the way. But yeah, I think there's definitely interesting guys. And as much as maybe I roll my eyes at the Chris Murray thing, just the frequency of it, I still do think that's a consideration at 24. And there's a chance that he's there.
Yeah. I like the Coulibaly dude. I haven't watched a lot of footage of him yet, but 6'6" with a 7'3" wingspan. That's crazy. That's crazy talk. And then the other guy that it was a real what's that?
No, I'm laughing. Like you did the wingspan, which is exactly one of the things that I like about Leonard Miller, even though he's 6'10". I guess he's 6'10" in shoes, I think is what he measured, but luckily they play basketball in shoes, so that bodes well. But he's 7'2" wingspan, and it's for a team that doesn't have a whole lot of wingspan on their in their front court players. It's a good thing it's a good problem to have.
Did you go to the Ignite games in Stockton this year?
Yeah, several. I've seen it several times over the past couple of years, and then I made a point when I was at All-Star Weekend to go to the All-Star G League All-Star game where
Rising Stars,
Nemi and Scoot kind of put on a show, but thinking that it would be a little bit more entertaining than what the game was with the actual NBA players, and for the most part, I think it was. It just kind of became a glorified dunk contest late, and they just stopped playing and just to clear space and let guys dunk. But it's seeing the Ignite play a lot, probably seeing more of them even on video than watching the Stockton team. But he's a neat little player. And by the way, I think did we talk about this? I can't remember if I mentioned on this podcast now, like, James, were you agreed with me? Like, Scoot Henderson, like, if we're drafting, he'd be my number 2, right?
Yeah, I don't think I'm touching
or were
the
you
Brandon.
gonna? Yeah,
No, I'm not touching the Brandon Miller thing. I'm like, real quick before I forget this. 2 prospects that I do like Leonard Miller, and the Coulibaly kid. But Olivier Maxence Prosper had like a tremendous combine, and he looks really, really intriguing, and I think he could actually move up draft boards pretty quick. And then Trace Jackson Davis from Indiana, like a 6'9", 245-pound power forward to block shots, but he can't shoot the 3 ball. So Sean, your question was Scoot. Yeah, the Brandon Miller stuff. Man, like, talk about red flags and talk about, like, I don't know his agent. I don't want to bash on his agent. But his agent doesn't have a lot of clients. And I like from his interviews, like, there's some questions about his interviews. There's some stuff about, like, they just said he's not in good shape at all. And then it came out, like, I was reading something that someone said he might have mono, and that's why he has no energy and he's out of shape and he hasn't been able to play a lot of basketball since the end of the season. And this is like, he's got off the court problems. Like, the court case against him, well, that's out there, it's not against him. The court case is still sketchy and weird and uncomfortable. And that's, like, the decision making is questionable. And I don't think he answered a lot of it. And he can't answer a lot of it because he's in the middle still of, there's still an active, like, court case where there are 2 guys who are up for capital murder. One of the guys who's up for capital murder called him and asked him to bring a gun somewhere. He brought the gun. That guy gave the gun to someone else who shot and killed somebody. And both of those people are up for capital murder. Like, you have you have to wonder why he's not like on the hook for any of it, because he brought a gun to something and like was a willing participant in something. And so like I just don't know. And the other thing is that if you're Charlotte number 2, like you already have the Miles Bridges situation. What do you do with Brandon Miller? Like how do you walk into the season next season with that kind of stuff hanging over like 2 of your players, not 1? Am I crazy?
I just think Scoot's the more safe bet to me, and I think the world of the kid. I think he's really good. And honestly, if you're in that position and maybe there's dropped if people project Brandon Miller to go higher than Scoot, then you can maybe even drop down a little bit if need be and see how that works. But I don't know. To me, I just think it some of the things you're mentioning is certainly cause for concern, but to me, it's just more of a belief that I think Scoot Henderson would probably be better overall in the long run.
Well, he's a kid without a single question mark. He's a very, very, very good kid from everyone that I've talked to around that team.
Yeah, seems extremely well-spoken, and he does really everything well. He finishes well at the rim. He can create for himself, and he also creates for his teammates much better than Brandon Miller. There's a big difference in size, but I think Scoot has like strength size to him and isn't small for a point guard. Can really show the ability to be physical, and it's proven. Like this is the second year of Scoot playing against grown adults in the G League, and Brandon Miller played phenomenally this year, but it's a difference in competition. And I think I agree with Sean. I think Scoot is the safer prospect. I could see somebody leaning towards Brandon Miller. I think James's point about what also being Charlotte and they already having different crap to deal with could play a factor in this as well. But to me, it is more so like I just think Scoot's phenomenal, and I think Brandon Miller could be really good. I think he's like the prototypical guy that people look for in today's NBA with his size and skill set. But I'm all about Scoot's defensive ability, poise for his age, seemingly from an outsider's perspective, at least, and all the reporting that's there and creating for himself and teammates the way he does.
Yeah. And I'm going to we talk about safer bets and all that stuff. I'm just going to say, I think Scoot Henderson's a better prospect. Like I don't like, regardless of that, all the other stuff, I do. I just think he's a phenomenal prospect. Like I don't want to put a qualifier on it. I don't want I'm tired of the crazy, like why the Lakers are losing. The Lakers lost to the Denver Nuggets because the Denver Nuggets were a much better team. That's it. That's why they lost. It doesn't matter. Like, and that's where I'm starting to get with some of these prospects. Like Brandon Miller is a perfectly fine prospect, but I think Scoot Henderson's a better prospect. He checks more boxes, and that's where I would go. But you also have LaMelo Ball. You also, like, I don't know.
Yeah, and those are the factoring that you have to do with picks like that so high up is taking a player like that is going to dramatically shift your franchise. And is it worth doing? Is it better to pair with somebody? I mean, certainly you have to just go down the trade boards of years past and see how that worked out in Sacramento and other places as well. Even Golden State, like you take a guy like Wiseman who needs time to develop and he can't scratch the floor with a championship caliber team, and then he gets hurt. Like now you're looking at the same thing with someone like Kuminga who comes in and Moody's able to crack rotation. I think sort of right, and then will Golden State. I know I keep bringing it back to Golden State in recent podcasts, but it's like they're just this team to watch because I know Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer who mentioned that LeBron and the Warriors would have mutual interest. It's like, okay, of course they would, but then you've got to if you're gonna whatever GM comes in there, if Bob Myers stays, which I wouldn't bet on, and if they bring in somebody else, this iteration of the Warriors that could likely be a lot different. Even if they keep the core together, which I don't think is all that likely. We'll see if that happens. But moving out people like Kuminga or Moody to try to fill to try to bring in another star, like bring in LeBron or somebody else like that. If it goes down those roads, could be really, really crazy and really interesting.
Okay,
Gross.
let's answer a couple of questions real quick. You guys mind?
I don't mind.
Gran Torino 916. I meant to ask this on the last live Kings Beat pod, but if Sasha elects to stay overseas, do the Kings move his rights? What are you guys' thoughts?
My thought there was I don't think they'd be very valuable. I mean, look at what it took for the Kings to moved a second round pick with Cleveland to take on the draft rights. That's really doesn't amount to that much for giving up for him. And if you bring over a guy like Sasha, which is I think pretty likely, he's going to sign a deal that's going to be bigger than any second round pick I've ever signed, so he's signing a free agent deal at that point. So I would say moving the draft rights wouldn't really have a whole lot of value to another team. And I also don't think Sasha Vezenkov looks at like the NBA and says, well, I'd only come over if I'm playing with this team or that team. Like, I think, the appeal of playing with somebody like Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox is high. And especially for a team that's on the upswing, who plays a very, very sexy style of basketball that's very appealing to an offensive player like him. I don't think he's looking at it and going, well, if I could only go, play in New York or LA, then I'd come over. It doesn't seem to be like what that guy's about.
Brendon?
I tend to think the same. Don't have too much to add there. I think that, what they acquired him for says a lot. I don't know that you'd get much. And if you still think like, oh, well, maybe there's a chance next year, it's probably more worth it to just hold on to it at that point. So I would lean towards no. I mean, it wasn't even just a second round pick. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like a mid to late second round pick. We're not talking early second round or anything. Like,
no,
it was further down. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it was pretty well said by Sean, and don't have too much else.
Let's put it, if you're looking in trade value for Sasha Vezenkov, is basically get him in a Kings uniform or get him on an NBA roster, and then his value is a lot higher than having just draft rights.
Yeah, he's the reverse of a draft pick, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, a draft pick is much more valuable until you draft the player. And then unless the player is really, really good, it's like buying a car off the lot. It goes down to like 35% value like the moment you do it. I'll also point out, like, Sasha is kind of strange, but Sasha wasn't much of a prospect. Like, when he was super young, he had a good season, like really, really young. He put up 18 points a game. But it wasn't until really not this season that he just finished, but the season before, where he started to put things together a little bit, and he averaged like 11.5 and then 13.8 in his two different seasons. And then you started to see him start to build on that. And then this year he blows up 17.6 and 17 points between the Euro League and the GBL League. He's a better prospect now than the day that they traded for him, for sure. He's taken a huge leap in production, but it doesn't matter. If he doesn't come over this year, this is kind of the window. I mean, he's going to be 28 before the season. Like, if he doesn't come over now, it's more just like, okay, look, man, we're not going to do this again. We're not going to sit here and chase you and act like you're something special and send everybody and their dog over to visit you. We're not doing that again. We did it this year. You decided to go back and stay there. And for me, it's almost like sunk cost. Like, the Kings, not only did they get Sasha's rights for that pick, but they got cash considerations. And the Kings have spent plenty of cash chasing him. But, like, I don't think that there's anything that they do with him if he decides not to come over. And, like, we have no idea whether he's going to. Well, I mean, they really, really want him for sure. What other questions do we have out there? Someone asked about Imani Bates. Were you guys on should the Kings take a late flyer on Imani Bates?
Well, he was heralded so high just a few years ago, and he was, I think, player of the year at one point for the state level. And I don't know. For whatever reason, I think development hasn't quite gone the way people thought. I would probably avoid it but that could be one of those really low risk, high reward situations in the second round if nobody pulls the trigger in the first round, which doesn't seem likely. I think honestly the best thing for him would be to not get drafted and lock onto a summer league team and go the G League route and see what happens.
Yeah, he doesn't really do it for me. I wouldn't mind, what is it, 54? Like at that point, sure. But the length's interesting. The shot creation can be interesting, but as of now, he's inefficient. He turns it over more than he's setting up assists by a decent margin. He just doesn't really do it for me. If it's later, like I said, 54, sure, there's really not much opportunity cost you're missing out on there. So that's fine to me, but I don't know. He doesn't pique my interest and he doesn't really do it for me.
Yeah, I think he's fun, but there's like red flags as well. And I think a lot of people
almost seems a little Liu King to me.
Okay.
I mean, stories are kind of similar. Yeah. I mean, mega talent in high school, even before his senior year of high school, mega talent, just impressive, and just runs into some pitfalls and runs into some obstacles that, some are self-created. And with Liu King, I think injury was a big part of it. So, if you can't get, like it or not, the NBA is a professional organization. It's a job. And if you don't treat basketball like a job, you're not going to last very long.
Yeah. I just think that, like, again, there's so many good vibes around the Kings that you don't really need to take a flyer on somebody like that. And I think he is going to have to work his way into the league. I don't even know if he'll be drafted. Like his combine stuff was, from what I know, wasn't bad. But at the end of the day, I think it's one of those situations where, certain players, like, are you going to put a two-way on the guy? Because that's kind of what you have to do. Like, he's not getting a regular contract. He's not going to, it's very unlikely that he climbs up draft boards and moves into the first round and gets guaranteed money. I just don't see it. Let's see. Do we have anything else? What do you guys think of this ridiculously crazy, trade proposal that like somehow has made its way to somewhat mainstream, like, where, what was it, Jaylen Brown for Wiggins and the 19th pick and Jordan Poole and I don't know, say Kuminga or someone else. Is this just like one of those things where all good players go to go to the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
That their fan base is spending more time theory crafting.
But yeah. It's not. When you think about it, though, look at your history. it's kind of true, right? You ended up with Kevin Durant not long ago. You had DeMarcus Cousins at a certain point. You had
neither of those are trades, though.
No trades. But I'm saying, like, in terms of them to be able to land pretty big talent, they move D'Angelo Russell to, offload that contract eventually and draft Wiseman and all these things. Like, they're a pretty active front office, and they're able to make some splashy moves that I'd argue a lot don't really work out. Somebody actually, I wish I could give them credit, posted kind of the Bob Myers transaction log since he's been there, and some of them are a little bit questionable. So much of which has worked out for them has been homegrown. KD notwithstanding, but all the other stuff has been rather tough. There's been a lot of failures along the way, but they're still a dynasty and have several championships. So
let's finish with this one. What do you guys think about signing Josh Hart or Gary Trent or revisiting Sadiq Bey trade?
I'd be intrigued.
Yes. Right.
All three probably. Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah. I'm on all four, all three. I think Sadiq Bey is definitely the last on that list for me. I do very much like Josh Hart, and I really like Gary Trent Jr. Sadiq Bey just hasn't quite clicked it defensively in the way that I would have hoped, but he's also still obviously very early in his career. So still TBD there, but I absolutely like those guys. I don't know that I think it's most realistic, but sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh Hart, like you're talking about the 3-and-D guy that you need, and then he has this extra thing that he does where he grabs like 7 or 8 rebounds a game. Yeah, I'm all over that. He's one of the best offensive rebounders you can find. I like Gary Trent as a more athletic version of what you already have, but I also think that if you were to do something like go for Gary Trent, you're gonna have to move off of Kevin Huerter, and I'm not sure the Kings are in that mode. And then the Sadiq Bey thing, I really like Sadiq Bey. I always have. And he still fits the bill as like that long, athletic, he can do just about everything that you need. Whether he's perfect, I don't think he is, but at the same time, that's why, like picking up a player from the Detroit Pistons is tough because you got a player who's kind of learned in a system where anything goes because you got a bunch of young players, and that's tough. And it's hard to develop in those situations. And I thought he was pretty good for Atlanta once he got traded. Yeah. So I would be all over that. I would do 24 for Sadiq Bey. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Yeah, I would consider that.
We already know you're crazy.
I am crazy.
We already know this.
All right.
We got one more that could double as the business of basketball.
The business of basketball. What do you got?
If you were a head coach, what opening would be the most appealing to you? I think it's an easy answer.
Yes, I think it's sort of an easy answer.
Yes, I will take any of them because they all pay a ton of money.
There's a lot of good options, but one stands out to me more than the others.
I will say Phoenix. It's not the one I say it and I don't even believe it. And I say, because I'd want to say Milwaukee, but I think Milwaukee is kind of in this really weird position. I mean, you're going to you have new ownership or whatever. Like there's some weird stuff going on over there. I just feel like they're going to crumble a bit. I feel like new ownership with Phoenix is on an upswing, and you have Kevin Durant, you have Devin Booker, you've got some nice things, you got nice pieces there. Philadelphia, I know you've got Embiid, and you're going to likely lose Harden, which is fine. I'm not a huge James Harden fan. I just feel like the pieces and having the new ownership group provides you some security and a way to be relevant and probably be able to prosper the most out of the four.
I'm taking the Bucks job. I'm not looking back.
Yeah,
I love Jrue Holiday. I love Giannis. I think people want to play with Giannis. I am slightly concerned that when you're injured in Milwaukee, according to Rudy Gay, you get fat. And I'm always injured.
Also, why do you want to live in Milwaukee over Phoenix, bro?
I can't handle the heat.
I factored that.
I can't handle the heat. Oh,
I won't take snow. I don't need snow. Keep me out of Toronto and Milwaukee, and Philly's fun, but it's cold there too. I'd rather take the warm weather.
Brenden, which job are you taking?
It was easy Milwaukee for me. I think that Phoenix has great talent.
What's up with their ownership group though? What are they doing?
I honestly don't know.
What's going to happen?
But what's with the ownership group in Phoenix? Are we sure that guy?
He just took over.
He took over, and all of a sudden Isaiah Thomas is there every day, and you're like, okay, maybe I'm more comfortable with the unknown than what I'm already starting to know about a dude who tried to hide a ball from Jokic sitting on the baseline. So
right.
I don't know. Maybe
I wouldn't worry about Isaiah Thomas. It's kind of like. I mean, I not to bring it back to the Kings. I don't think it would be a Chris Mullin situation with the Kings where Mully's trying to coach. But
you think that? You think that?
I'm a Giannis, Middleton, Jrue Holiday is a dream trio to me, and Booker and KD are phenomenal. Two guys that have They could each feel like they're the best player in the league, and I think it would be understandable for them to feel that way. But after that, like, what's going on with DeAndre Ayton? Is Chris Paul going to be there? And who the hell else do you have after that?
Yeah, I also feel like, again, I just don't think Milwaukee's going to be what we know. I don't think it'll be that way. I think they're going to be crumbling down a bit. But I love Giannis. I love those guys. And if they don't, then yeah, it would look silly because I thought the Bucks are incredible.
All right, we're approaching tomorrow, so let's wrap this thing up. Do we have any final thoughts?
I just want to know if anybody in the chat is coming to Bottle Rock with me. Like, that would be fun. There's
Sean?
like 100. How many people we have in here?
140. Well, we got a good chunk of people. Everybody,
140,
thumbs up.
000?
Give us a thumbs up if you're in the chat.
Oh, that's not very many. Only 66 thumbs ups.
Thumbs
up, thumbs up.
Oh, see, I'm not looking at I don't look at that number while we're live, because then I've got to open up a different window. I do have a lot of windows open, but I'm not going to that window. Okay, final thoughts. Sean, what do you got?
I honestly have nothing. I hope I'm wrong with the Miami Heat pick, because I want there to be basketball and not have like 7 or 8 days with no hoops. But I think with Bottle Rock on the way, I'm on off-season mode, man. I need to get through this. I'll get it back into gear sometime late next week. But yeah, I'm totally looking for it. Am I a pit guy or a seat guy? Absolute pit guy. I get close. I get close.
Oh,
so
all right.
Yeah.
Brenden, what do we got for final thoughts?
I got beat the hell up wakeboarding today. I
fun,
face
right?
planted horribly hard.
Were you wearing a helmet?
I was not wearing a helmet.
Oh, you got to wear a helmet.
I was wearing a life vest, but I was not wearing a helmet. I can get up. This is only the second time I've wakeboarded, and the first time was a couple of years ago. And I can get up just fine. But then once I'm there, I want to do more, but I don't know how to do more. So I tried to do the changing stance and just fell flat on my face. Pretty tough. And then the next time out, my dad totally ran me over by the boat, scared the absolute crap out of me. I thought I was going to die earlier today, but I lived.
He ran you over with the boat?
Yeah. He's typically pretty good about not doing that, but
it's
it wasn't.
I'm someone who has boats. That's not great. That's not great.
Yeah, but I feel beat up. I had fun, but I feel beat up.
Okay, yeah, you can come up and you can wakeboard with Toby. Yeah,
you guys wakeboard there?
Yes.
On your lake? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Wow. That's what. Do you wakeboard, James?
No, dude. Okay. Like, my back is shot. I can't golf, let alone wakeboard.
Wow. Oh, by the way, Jason asked about the State Fair concerts. Was it Ashanti? Is Ashanti going to be there? I'd go to that. I think she's at the State Fair. And Arctic Monkeys. I'm not going to Arctic Monkeys at Golden One Center because I will be in San Diego to see hopefully what is 3 straight days of concerts, which will be Coldplay, then Odessa, and then that Friday in Del Mar, I think, is Haim with the Killers. So that's what I'm looking like.
Nice. All right. Final thoughts from James. Come and hang out with us tomorrow on ESPN 1320. I'll be on with Damian all day tomorrow, all day on Thursday, covering for Kenny all week. He's got some stuff going on at home and needs some time. So come hang out with us. Also, look for a second pod later in the week. Ricardo Brito Reyes from Portugal is going to join me. And so I'll put out a second pod this week, which will be just a little different, and it won't be live. But he's going to break down not only Nemias Queta, but also Sasha Vezenkov, who he's spent plenty of time covering in European play. Outside of that, be safe. Get out, get in, go outside, get in your pool or lake. Do not go in any of the rivers. Please don't go into any rivers.
Oh man. Yeah.
It's just been an absolute mess up here. It's almost every day. Like, do not get in the river, and it's not what you think. The water is not what you think at all. And there's big sticks hiding underneath the water. I'm a kid who grew up at the river. But like we have so much snowfall and the water is so cold that you really don't have a shot. So don't do it. Okay. Are we good? You guys are good? I think that's it. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into the Kings Beat podcast. We will attempt to do a happy hour next week. I'm working overtime on getting a guest. It's just been one of those weird, like, just availability. People aren't available during the time. So working hard on it, but make sure to jump on board, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the Kings Beat podcast here on YouTube. Subscribe wherever you're listening to the podcast, because the audio file does way more than the YouTube video usually does. So jump on board. Go to thekingsbeat.com, go become a premium subscriber to thekingsbeat.com. And so you get invites to all of the things like happy hours, and you also get all the written content, which there will be written content this week. It's just really tough when you got 4-hour blocks in the middle of the day eating your time. So for Box 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Hammer, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you very soon.